As an analyst, I always want to be able to perform what-if analysis on whatever type of scenario. Luckily, within SAP Analytics Cloud, I have an application that is purpose-built to do just that. Here within this application, I can create my new scenario from scratch. I can run this scenario and I can compare the scenario to other scenarios to see what the impact might be. In this example, I will select a base dataset. Here the actuals of last year moved over, carried forward to this year, adding 10%. And I will give a name to my scenario where I want to analyze the impact of the price rise in energy and utilities bills to see what the impact would be on our net profit. Directly in the next page, I'm redirected to show the new scenario that I've just created, comparing it to the actuals last year plus 10%, and to start adding my drivers.
So let's see how it works technically behind the scene. So in the first screen, the end user chooses a baseline version on which he will create a new scenario. Then he gives a name to this new scenario, and finally he clicks on the OK button. So let's see what is the code associated to this OK button. So first what we do is we create a private version based on the name given by the end user. To do that, we use the copy method and we pass three parameters: the name, the copy option, here we copy all the data, and finally the planning category. Then we publish this private version as a public version, again by passing the name and the planning category, which is the forecast category in this case. Finally, we filter tables in tab 2 and in tab 3 by using the set dimension filter, and we pass the two versions we have declared before, so the baseline version and the scenario version.
In the second screen, we see 4 steps that we can take to move on for our scenario. First step is to add drivers. So let's start with just that. As we said, we want to simulate our energy price rise impact. So in this case, the first thing that I'll add is the gas price increase, which I expect to be a 67% impact for the full year. So starting Q1 up to Q4, and it's going to impact my electricity bill. So that is the account that I'm going to put in here. As I hit OK, I see that this driver is being added to the driver table on the right, where some pre-built drivers have already been set. I can also use one of those pre-built drivers to add a 1% sales increase between Q1 and Q3 that I expect to happen due to a product launch or a marketing campaign or such. And now what I'll do is I'll open up the variance analysis view with a tabular view as well as a graphical view. And I will hit calculate scenario, running a calculation in the backend using those drivers dynamically that I've just created. And what I will see is I will see the impact between Q1 and Q4 for the electricity bill and between Q1 and Q3 for the sales increase. I can now analyze these differences and also apply given corrections wherever I see fit. Finally, I can also analyze these differences in a graphical view. And if I want to perform further analysis or make different comparisons, I can always jump to the next page, which is compare scenario, where we will continue our journey to make sure that this insight of the energy price impact is going to be shared.
In the second screen, the Run Scenario screen, we take benefit of 3 important APIs. So let's see what they are. So in the first 2 are used in the driver table. And when we click on the Add Driver button, first what we have is we open a pop-up. And in this pop-up, we ask for different information, like the description of your driver, the impact in percentage on driver, and the timeline of your driver. So in the code associated to the button, first we retrieve all the information entered by the user, then we create a member. This member is based on what the user has entered, and we use the create member method to add a new driver in the table with the value associated in terms of impact. To enter this value in terms of impact in percentage, we create first a selection object where to enter this value, and finally we use the set the user inputs method where we pass our selection and the value fill out by your end user. And finally, to make it appear in the table, we use the refresh data to display the results in the table. Then there is another button called Calculate Scenario, which uses another important API, is a data action API. So let's see the code associated again behind. So what we do first, we pass some parameter value to this data action, and we use the scenario version ID, which is the ID of the new scenario we have created before. And then we execute this data action via script with the execute method. And the data action is called what if data action, which is declared in SAP Analytics Cloud. And finally, to see the result in our table 1 and our chart 1, we refresh the data. And we can see the result.
In this final compare scenario page, we notice that we're already filtered on the scenarios we were just working with, but we can make a change. We could open this in Data Analyzer to share it as a separate file with other users on the system, or we can directly from here add drivers or add dimensions so we can analyze it by location or by product, for example. But here I feel we're done with the analysis and we want to share the formatted report with our fellow colleagues to share this insight. So I select the version that I want to use as my base to compare. So this energy price impact, the comparison version that I used. And if I hit OK over here, a formatted report will automatically be generated just for me to comment on and share with my fellow colleagues. In this final step, we notice in the story filter that we've automatically been filtered on the versions we've just selected. In this formatted report, we will have a driver view and a scenario view. In the driver view, we directly see the drivers that we've inputted as a guideline for what actually happened within our scenario. And what we'll subsequently do is we'll add comments to these different scenarios. So actuals plus last year plus 10% as the agreed on baseline. And the scenario that we just created, we want to make sure to add the comments of the impact that we see so that the user directly understands what they need to be looking at and why it's relevant, making my job as an analyst a little bit easier. Finally, I want to, of course, share this insight that I've just created with my fellow colleagues. And I can use the embedded collaboration capabilities within SAP Analytics Cloud to share this formatted report with management or other people within my team, so we can use this scenario as a baseline for further planning. This concludes the process that I've went through as an analyst to perform what if on a new scenario, add drivers dynamically, do my analysis on the impact that is actually perceived here, and then that impact is something, of course, I want to share with, for example, my planners, so that they can take this into account for the next planning rounds. So we have this full loop in which we use planning capabilities and analytics capabilities all through a guided application, so I as an analyst don't have to get too technical to perform these kinds of steps directly within the system.
In the final screen, the compare scenario screen, we propose to the end user to go more in details in his version comparison. So first, we propose in the Open Data Analyzer button to open an insight from Data Analyzer. So as a reminder, an insight is a state of an application at a certain moment of time. then the end user can click on the Open Table Designer, and in this case he will use the Open Navigation panel, which allows him to drag and drop dimension and measure on the fly in order to explore more in details its version. And finally, there is this third button called Open Formatted Report, where the end user can open a formatted report by passing some specific parameters. So first, what we do is we open a pop-up where we populate this pop-up with all the version, but what we also take care is to populate this only with dirty version, which means versions that has been modified. Then the pop-up is open, and in this pop-up you can select the version you want to publish, and you can select the version you want to compare also. And by doing that, then first we publish the version you have selected in the pop-up, and then we build a specific string based on the version you have selected to be compared. And the goal is really to have in the formatted report display only the version you want to compare. And to do that, we use the open story method, where we pass different parameters, so the model, SAC model parameter, the dimension parameter, and finally the value parameter with the string we have built just previously.